As the Holy Mother returns, her shadow is rising, and in order for her to be fully restored, we must alchemize those shadows. What we're witnessing in the collective is a purging of the false dark mother frequency, energy. The distortion of the feminine that was born from centuries, millennia even, of suppression, of persecution, of inversion and trauma. And yet, amidst all this collective darkness and chaos, the Holy Mother, the true Mother, is calling us home, into our hearts, into the heart of truth. As we know, history, or his story, was written by the victors, essentially the patriarchy that inverted the true feminine essence. So we are undergoing a restoration of her story, the story of the mother, the priestess, the goddess. And this process of reclamation and restoration is calling us deeper within to heal those wounds of persecution, to reclaim our power, to reclaim our voices, to right the wrongs, the distortions of his story. So the purging, the purification that we are viscerally experiencing within our own nervous systems is the same purging and purification that is occurring within the collective body, within the collective consciousness. This is the dark night before the dawn. And part and parcel of this process is going through the shadow work. This is what brings us into that process of reclamation and remembrance. And part of this process of purification and purging is shadow work, facing the shadows within and within the collective. This is the process of reclamation, restoration, remembrance, is really witnessing what has happened in our own pasts, in our ancestral past, through the lineage, and in past lives. So in this video, the fourth in the Divine Feminine Awakening series, we're going to dive deeper into these feminine shadows, the dark feminine archetypes, and the wounding within the feminine that has arisen from patriarchal suppression. So we're going to look at the dark mother, the Jezebel and Succubus energies as well, and lay the foundation of understanding where the wounding and shadow aspects of the common feminine archetypes came from. What was their origin point? So looking at the virgin, the queen, the priestess, the oracle, the healer, the witch, looking at the origins of these woundings, we're going to go deeper into those patterns and archetypes in the next video of this series. We will dive deeper in that video into those specific wounds and how to heal them as well. And in this video, we're going to lay the foundation and broaden the field to understand the bigger energies that are working through us all. And of course, a huge part of this is the sisterhood wound, which we're going to look at in the next video as well. So the intention for this video is really to focus on the distorted feminine energies underlying the shadow essences, the dark mother itself, and importantly, distinguish between the dark mother and the organic holy mother. So welcome back if you've been tuning into this series. I am Amanda, an Oracle and Divine Feminine Mastery Mentor, and I'm your guide for this journey on the Divine Feminine Rising and Awakening. So let's dive into this video. So patriarchal suppression and inversion, we're going to look at the history of the feminine wounding and persecution, because the feminine wounds of persecution run deep. They run through the lineage. They run through our multiple reincarnations, through the multidimensional aspects of self, through past lives. So this is really important to frame this in the wider sense, not just looking at our own personal inner child wounding, but looking at the collective wounds of the feminine as a whole. because we have to remember that we are all in this together. We are all one, right? We are returning to unity consciousness. And so recognizing that the wounds that we hold ourselves are reflected in the wounds that are held by our sisters. And when we experience the sisterhood wound, it can really help to understand, to zoom out and understand that she is likely grappling with similar wounds or her own version of this greater feminine persecution wound. So it is no secret that in the time of the patriarchy, the last however many centuries and millennia, several thousand years at least, perhaps 4,000 to 5,000 years, women have been persecuted, suppressed, oppressed, and even outright genocided. There are some that purport that we have witnessed over the last however many centuries and millennia a veritable holocaust against women. There are estimates that as many as 50 million people were slaughtered over the years for the crime of heresy by Roman persecutors. And this occurred over a number of centuries between AD 606, roughly, and the middle of the 19th century, which is actually not that long ago in the grand scheme of history. And some say that this is even a whitewashed estimate. And when you think about that, that's a vast number of people. That is almost a sixth of the US population, give or take. During these burning times, as some refer to them, over 80% of those killed were, in fact, women. They were herbalists, midwives, the village healers. They had knowledge of plants, the stars, and earth. They were deeply connected to the earth. And they were essentially the remnants of a network of healers, of priests and priestesses from ancient mystery schools that carried on the earth-based wisdom and traditions of healing and connection and divine connection in particular. So they were persecuted for having this really intimate connection to source and this ability to heal. Many are familiar with the Salem witch trials of Northern America that were held in Salem, Massachusetts in the late 1600s, but by no means was that an isolated incident. And I find it quite interesting and ironic that Salem actually means peace. So talk about an inversion, and this is what has happened with so much of our reality in this 3D matrix and this patriarchal paradigm is that so much of the organic coding and the truth itself has been inverted, distorted, co-opted, corrupted, hijacked, but many of it outright inverted. So what did they do is they created shadow overlays around the original organic pure essence of the feminine, the power of the feminine that has the ability to heal. Now, yes, there are plenty of wounded women over history who perpetuated the distortion, who operated in the distorted, inverted, false dark feminine energy. And this is how these stereotypes also got perpetuated. So are all women blameless? Not necessarily. However, we've got to look at the roots and remember that it is only through compassion and forgiveness will we collectively heal. And women are still very much in the process of healing the pain of suppression and oppression. In America, we only gained the right to vote in 1920. That is a mere century ago. A lot has changed in the last century, and a lot of that change has come through frequencies of distortion. The feminist movement has become quite distorted. Some would argue that perhaps there was always a level of distortion there. Putting on a pantsuit and stepping into masculine energy is not the way for feminine to reclaim her true feminine essence, her true feminine power. Of course, we all have the right to choose the path that we want in a truly free and equal society. A woman should have the choice, and she should not have to deal with judgment for making any of those choices, including a more traditional role such as motherhood. Motherhood, I personally see as one of the most divine sacred callings, because it is through our wombs that we give birth to the next generation. This is how we perpetuate the human species. So to denigrate the role of motherhood, to relegate it to the sidelines, has actually created a great deal of collective wounding, generational wounding on a lot of levels. So when we are talking about reclaiming our power, it is power in all aspects, in all respects, in all different phases, from the maiden to the mother to the crone. We are here to reclaim the beauty, the magic, the power of each phase of life, of each choice, of each pathway. Because to me, motherhood that is diminished by many, again, is one of the most sacred callings and one of the most important roles if we are to heal the planet going forward. A healed mother and with a healed womb will create a vessel for a healed soul to come through with less karma, with less baggage, with less drama. And this is even looking at the environmental patterns, the emotional intelligence level. But once one has transmuted the shadows and the karma, they're going to operate in that frequency of harmony and raise the children in that space of love, of harmony, of balance, and recognizing the gifts that the child contains. This is how we nurture the unique gifts and even the psychic gifts of the young children, the young generations coming in. So part of what must be grappled with is this sisterhood wound of judgment of other paths that women choose for themselves. So there is a vast array of wounding that feminines are grappling with, the feminine energy, the feminine essence in masculines as well. But we only gained the right to own property in the relative recent history. And as recently as 2013, a woman was sentenced to death by stoning in Sudan, not to mention the amount of atrocities that have been committed against women all across the world. And when I myself was in India back in 2009, I met a beautiful woman who had gotten a master's degree, and the pressure was on her to get married by her family. And she held a deep fear of that because her own cousin had been burned to death by her husband. And the reasoning I can't remember off the top of my head. Perhaps it was because of a miscarriage or something like that. However, he went unpunished. The entire village, the entire society knew about it, and nothing was done. And then we look at genital mutilation, religious suppression across the world, multiple religions, and even something as simple as unequal pay. And in America, we have a rampant epidemic of single mothers who are left without a support network. And the phrase, "it takes a village," is there for a reason. So we have a great deal of wounding to grapple with in our modern day and age as well. But we've got to go back through the history, her story, to remember, bring the aspects of self back together. The immense amount of pain, wounding, trauma that has been passed on through the lineages, as well as the collective consciousness of the feminine. Feminine carry a great deal of fear of persecution. And a lot of this stems back to the witch trials, the burning times, whatever you want to call it, as well as past lives as priestesses, oracles, witches who may have even been sacrificed. So yes, now in 2025, or whenever you might come across this video, we are still feeling the repercussions of the witch hunts, of the witch trials, and this outlawing of our way of life that was in communion with nature, this stifling, this suppression of feminine power. The temples and mystery schools were systematically destroyed by the patriarchy and the church. And this even stems down into our language, our terminology, the use of the word witch, of whore, of virgin. There has been so much distortion placed on these words, as well as symbols associated with the divine feminine, with healers. We have black cats that were deemed unlucky. And which meant wise one, or those who were tuned into the earth, was inverted and distorted and associated with this hag-like crone version of the witch. And looking at the root of the word whore, which is har, and the word virgin, the original meaning was actually sovereign, whole, and holy unto herself. So we can see very clearly how these original essences became hijacked, inverted, distorted, like Salem itself, and Friday the 13th, which was deemed unlucky. 13 is actually a number associated with the divine feminine, and Friday is a day that is associated with Venus. Venus, the embodiment of the pure feminine essence, the divine feminine essence. So, deeming Friday the 13th unlucky and associating it with even violence is an absolute inversion of this original Priestess day. And the number 13 itself was deemed unlucky and even eradicated from the world in many regards. There is no number 13, row 13 in airplanes, and floor 13 in elevators, and perhaps in apartment buildings, no apartment number 13, right? So they have essentially removed 13 from our world, from our matrix reality. And why is that? This is subconscious programming in action. Anything associated with the organic holy feminine has been desecrated and pillaged and inverted. So this has all been a deliberate inversion and distortion of the sacred feminine to keep us in separation. Again, this is brainwashing. So just like the witch was cast as evil and we associate it with the Wicked Witch of the West, all symbols associated with the sacred feminine have been deemed unlucky or likewise cast as evil as well. So women in their power and anyone who threatened the hegemony of the church, including the druids, the healers, the knowledge and wisdom keepers, the witches, they were persecuted. They were deemed unholy because they specifically threatened the church, because they preached this divine connection, this direct connection and communion with Source, which essentially cuts out the intermediary of the priests. We no longer need the priest if we can connect directly with God. So, of course, anybody who had the capacity or the remembrance simply to directly connect with Source is in opposition to the agenda of the patriarchal religion, the church, the Holy Roman Empire. Sexuality and sensuality were literally demonized, and this is, in essence, in its pure form, where our power comes from. That Kundalini Shakti life force energy was demonized, and this creates a narrative that we ourselves, as women, are inherently flawed or even evil, that we were even born with sin just because of who we are. So, as the divine feminine energy rises in remembrance through the collective consciousness, we are accessing a deep reservoir of codes that are assisting us and guiding us deeper into embodiment of this essence that we all contain within. So let's dive deep into the false dark mother archetype, because this is truly the origin of a lot of the inversion and distortion. And yes, I am saying the origin of even the patriarchy itself, because behind the distorted fallen masculine, many perceive that it is actually this false dark mother consciousness that originally manipulated the masculine. So the false dark mother, who is she? She is the hijacked aspect of the feminine that feeds on pain, control, domination, and separation. and she is deeply manipulative. Now, to be clear, this energy itself was generated by trauma. When the feminine was severed from source, her creative power was inverted into control or victimhood. And these dark feminine energies often express as the Jezebel or Succubus archetypes, as well as collective mother wound energies that both men and women hold. A lot of the masculine wounding arises from the mother wound. So these mother wound energies look like manipulation, rage, martyrdom, the need for validation, codependency, or even energetic consumption. That vampire type energy, that energy vampire. And it also looks like jealousy and envy of those who hold the true codes. But I want to clarify that this false dark mother, this inverted dark mother, is not the true dark mother, because the true holy mother is the dark, fertile void, the cosmic womb from which all life is birthed. So we've got to make that distinction, and this is exactly what we are in the process of restoring. And we're restoring it through our own vessels, our own beings, by doing this work, by becoming the alchemist who alchemizes the shadow. And this is what we're in the process of restoring by being the vessel, the alchemist that processes and alchemizes the shadow to become that embodiment, that being, that vessel of light. So looking deeper now at the Jezebel and Succubus energies, both the Jezebel and Succubus energies are distortions or shadow overlays of the true divine feminine sexual current, particularly the Magdalene Sophia line that carries the pure creative force of the Holy Mother. So again, part of this process of restoration is to show compassion and neutrality for anybody operating in this energy, in this frequency, because these are actually survival patterns of a disconnected feminine, patterns rooted in trauma, not necessarily moral failings. That does not mean you have to give them undue access to your energy. Of course, hold your boundaries firm, but part of this process is to forgive for yourself, to allow those cords to dissolve so that we're not ruminating on what was done to us, because that itself is victim consciousness, which can keep us out of our own power. So we claim all our energy back. We take our energy back from any situations that might have occurred with a dark, inverted, distorted feminine energy. And we dissolve the cord and send it back to love and God's source for God to deal with, or the great mystery, the great void source, however you want to connect with it. So the Jezebel distortion itself arises as a false feminine template that seeks power through control, manipulation, seduction even, rather than true divine magnetism. So her current has been reversed, and she is in a frequency of extraction and control versus magnetism. And again, this is rooted in trauma, the pain of being silenced, shamed, or dethroned, perhaps. And so it mimics really true feminine authority by weaponizing allure or emotional intensity. So, in essence, the Jezebel archetype embodies distorted forms of creative power that, when healed, become life force, mastery, magnetism, and sovereign expression. Now, the succubus energy is a deeper energetic parasitism or energetic vampirism, even, that is linked to the same wound, actually. So it feeds on sexual energy and life force rather than channeling it from source. So it's this energetic shadow of the sacred sexual priestess, for example. It's an inversion of the Magdalene current that turns creative life energy into consumption instead of creation. I have witnessed this plenty within the awakened community, within the divine feminine community, to the point where It's almost even disturbing. And I say that not from a space of judgment, because I really grappled with that myself for a while. I'm like, am I just injecting judgment from my own sisterhood wounding or whatever? Or am I picking up on a deeper distortion, a deeper distorted energetic current driving this overt sexuality that is energetic leakage, not true embodied sensuality? So there is a distinction there, and we get to really anchor in and hone in on our discernment to not be in that space of judgment, perhaps, but to really be able to discern the true embodied sensual current versus the overt Jezebel energy that is sexualizing herself for the male gaze, not for the purpose of female liberation and empowerment, no matter what her caption might say. So this is something that we get to be very clear about, because evil originates in these energetic agreements that people make unconsciously many times with these energies that then serve them a source of power, but it is not true source that they're deriving their power from. So this is where we have to be really cautious in the New Age community, because many people think that they're on this awakened path connecting with these goddess priestess archetypes, but they're really playing a role. They're not truly walking a path of devotion. So dressing up and shaking your hips on Instagram does not make one a priestess, does not make one a divine feminine embodiment coach either. So really use your own discernment, because there are many out there that are perpetuating this distortion, not just through their teachings, but through the frequency that they are emanating out, and they are getting people entangled and hooked into through contracts that people make with them, but literal financial contracts when people engage in their programs. And so this is how they open up the siphoning forces and tools. So just because somebody is making a lot of money doesn't mean that they have their stuff all figured out. Just because somebody has a huge following on Instagram and maybe making money both at the same time, it does not mean that they're doing so under the guidance of God. It does not mean that they're actually a divine conduit. Perhaps they have made a darker contract, and the entity that is sourcing them is feeding off of this energy. So this is where the discernment, now I'm not trying to inject fear into this conversation, but this is where discernment becomes incredibly important. So again, both these archetypes of the Jezebel and Succubus energy arise from the Dark Mother reversal field. Of course, this is a reversal of the true organic, Sophianic, Holy Mother essence. These archetypes and energetic patterns have arisen from the collective field of feminine trauma severed from her source connection and forced to seek energy externally. So again, compassion is required. And this is where we get to reclaim our own energy and break any contracts we might have with energies and entities that perpetuate this frequency. This is where we get to clear our own field and become energetically sovereign. The true Magdalene frequency embodies union with God through the heart and the womb, while the Jezebel and Succubus distortions embody separation from source, and the attempt to replace that connection through control, seduction, or energetic vampirism. And again, a lot of the feminine wounding comes through the family lineage, so it is incumbent upon each and every one of us to do the shadow alchemy, to face the aspects of our consciousness that are trapped in victimhood, that are operating in distortion, and to just get really honest with ourselves from a space of absolute compassion and love. And this is what connecting, reconnecting, restoring our connection with the Holy Mother can help us to do when we are held in the arms of the true Holy Mother. It becomes easier to bathe in that frequency of forgiveness and compassion and nurturing and love, so that we can face these shadows, so that we can feel safe looking at the trauma and the wounding underlying it, looking at the trauma that perhaps we took on in this lifetime to show us those patterns, and to then, of course, alchemize them. So safety in the nervous system to do this work is something that we're also going to look at in the next video as we dive deeper into the specific archetypes, both the gifts and the wounds of the shadows of those archetypes, looking at the priestess, the oracle, the witch, the virgin, the queen, the healer, and then the sisterhood wounds as a whole, because this is a huge theme, again, that is coming up in the collective. So by understanding these archetypal and planetary distortions of the mother, the control, martyrdom, seduction, victimhood, manipulation, we can better understand the energetic currents running through us, through our lineage, perhaps, as well as through the feminine collective. So I do happen to be recording this in the end of October, and we'll be posting this leading into the Samhain portal, Halloween time, where the veil is the thinnest, and this is the time where we are invited into the descent. We are invited to descend into our consciousness, our hearts, our wombs, to really look deeply within and do this inner alchemy. So I invite you to reflect on the idea of whether the descent is, in fact, a sacred return. As I often say, the deeper you dive, the higher you rise, because you create room for those higher frequencies of your higher self to embody into your physical vessel when you clear out the distortions of the dense, heavy patterns that have kept you in pain, in wounding, and in trauma. So in the next video, we will do that deeper dive. And if you're looking to go deeper into this work, I invite you into the cosmic womb, where we are going to actually grapple with the nervous system. And as soon as you gain access, as soon as you register, you will gain access to bonus content, including Align and Shine, a course I recorded exactly 2 years ago over the Samhain portal, that guides us through the throat chakra and the womb chakra, the sacral chakra, integration and reclamation, because these are the centers of manifestation and co-creation, the yin and the yang centers. So I talk about energetic alignment and specifically working with those centers, so it complements the cosmic womb perfectly. And there are additional activations and this series as well as pre-course material. So you'll get a lot as soon as you register for the cosmic womb, which will be between solar Samhain and winter solstice. Those are both included, the activations and ceremonies. And that 6 weeks in between, we are going to deep dive into restoration of the Holy Mother and all that that entails. So I invite you to explore what's included in the description below. There will be a link in the comment as well. And so I invite you to look deeper and feel into it, because this is going to bring us through that dark mother integration, so that we can embody fully the holy Sophianic essence and restore our crystalline wombs, so that we can become powerful co-creators, reclaiming our power, reclaiming our original organic essence. And if you're enjoying this series, I so appreciate the like, subscribes, the comments. How is this landing with you? How is this resonating with you? Please do share all that this is bringing up for you. And with that, I will see you in the next video, the feminine wounds and the feminine gifts as well.